Now the next sutta is 7.6.53. Once when the Exalted One dwelt near Rajagaha on Mount Vulture Peak, two devas of surpassing loveliness, lighting up almost the whole peak, approached the Exalted One at the passing of the night, saluted him and stood at one side. And standing there, one deva said, "Lord, these nuns are freed." And the other said, "Lord, these nuns are wholly freed and without attached remainder." Thus spoke those devas, and the Master approved. And seeing that, they saluted the Exalted One, and keeping him on their right, vanished from there. I'll just stop here for a moment to comment. You notice, even though the Buddha had psychic power, quite often the devas, heavenly beings, they would come and inform the Buddha about certain things that were happening around. And that is because even though the Buddha has psychic power, he did not make any effort to know what was going around him, because usually he'd abide in meditation, he'd abide in jhana, and he's being a person who is liberated, he doesn't worry about the world. But sometimes he does worry about his disciples. Then he'll go and give advice to his disciples sometimes. Then the sutta continues. At dawn, the Exalted One told the monks all that had taken place. Now at that time, the Venerable Mahamoggallana sat near the Exalted One, and he thought, "What devas know the partly attached as partly attached, the wholly detached as wholly detached?" About then, a monk named Tissa had recently died, and had arisen in one of the Brahma worlds, and there they knew him as Brahma Tissa, the mighty, the very powerful. And the Venerable Mahamoggallana, as a strong man might stretch forth his bent arm, or bend his outstretched arm, vanished from Mount Vulture Peak and appeared in that Brahma world. And Brahma Tissa saw the Venerable One from afar coming along, and on seeing him said, "Come, worthy Moggallana, welcome, worthy Moggallana. It's been long indeed since you made this round, that is to say, came here. Be seated, worthy sir, here on this seat made ready." And the Venerable Mahamoggallana sat down on the seat made ready, and Brahma Tissa, after paying homage to him, also sat down at one side. And the Venerable Mahamoggallana said to Brahma Tissa, thus seated, "To what devas, Tissa, is there this knowledge? As to being partly unattached, he is that. As to being wholly unattached, he is that." And Brahma Tissa said, "The Brahma Deva hosts, worthy Moggallana, have this knowledge." "What, have they all this knowledge?" "No, worthy sir. Those devas who are satisfied with Brahma life, Brahma beauty, Brahma happiness, Brahma pomp, Brahma power, and know not the escape from it to the beyond as there really is, they have not this knowledge. As to being partly unattached, he is that. As to being wholly unattached, he is that. But those devas of the Brahma hosts who are not so satisfied and know the escape to the beyond, they have this knowledge. Consider, worthy Moggallana, the monk who is freed both ways. Of him those devas know thus. This reverend sir is freed both ways, and so long as his body lasts, devas and men shall see him, but on the breaking up of the body, they shall not see him. And thus it is, worthy sir, that these devas have the knowledge. As to being unattached, he is that." I'll just stop here to comment. So you see, this Mahamoggallana, the Arahant, went to consult the Brahma Tissa. It might be that this Deva was formerly a disciple of the Venerable Mahamoggallana. That is why the Venerable Mahamoggallana seems to be very friendly with him, went to consult him, and Brahma Tissa paid respect to the Venerable Mahamoggallana. And in a previous sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 6.4.34, we also read about how Venerable Mahamoggallana consulted this same Brahma Tissa about how many devas have entered the stream. Now here, the Brahma Tissa is talking about the first type of Arya, the both ways liberated. This freed both ways, or both ways liberated, refers to the Arahant who is liberated by mind and liberated by wisdom, and also called an Arahant liberated by mind. Then he continues, again consider him who is liberated by wisdom. They know of him the same. Consider the monk who is a body witness, Kaya Saki. Of him they know, this reverend sir is a body witness. Perhaps by practicing things proper as to sleeping and sitting, having fellowship with good friends, controlling the faculties, he may enter and abide in that consummation beyond all of the holy life, realizing it here and now by his own knowledge, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home to the homeless life. And thus it is, worthy sir, that these devas have the knowledge. As to being partly unattached, he is that. Consider him who is a view winner or view attainer, Ditipato, and then the faith released, Saddha Vimutto, and then the Dhamma follower, Dhammanusarin. Of each they know, this reverend sir is such a one, and perhaps by practicing things proper, they may enter and abide in the consummation beyond all of the holy life. And thus these devas know, as to being partly unattached, he is that. I'll stop here again to comment. The first two, the freed both ways, or liberated both ways and liberated by mind, refers to the Arahant, and they are wholly unattached. But the others mentioned here, they are Arya who have not completed their work. So because of that, they are partly unattached, not wholly unattached. According to the Anguttara Nikaya 3.3.21, the body witness, and then the view attainer, and the faith released are either Sakadagamin, Anagamin, or fourth path Arya, Arahataya, Patipano. They are the second fruition, third fruition, or the fourth path Arya. And the sutta continues. And the Venerable Mahamoggallana, delighted, pleased by Brahmatisa's words, as a strong man might bend his arm to and fro, vanished from the Brahma world, and appeared on Mount Vulture Peak. And he approached the Exalted One, saluted him, and sat down at one side. And seated thus, the Venerable Mahamoggallana related to the Exalted One all that talk that he had with Brahmatisa. And the Buddha said, but Brahmatisa did not teach you the seventh person, Moggallana, the dweller in the signless. And the Venerable Mahamoggallana said, now is the time, O Blessed One, now is the time, O Wayfarer. Were the Exalted One to teach concerning the dweller in the signless, the monks would hear and remember. Therefore, Moggallana, listen, pay heed, I will speak. Yes, Lord, rejoined the Venerable Mahamoggallana, and the Exalted One said, consider, Moggallana, the monk who by inattention to all signs enters and abides in signless mental concentration. Of him those devas know, this reverend sir abides in signless mental concentration, perhaps by practicing things proper as to sleeping and sitting, having fellowship with good friends and control of the faculties. He may enter and abide in that consummation beyond all of the holy life, realizing it here now by his own knowledge, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home to the homeless life. And thus it is, Moggallana, that these devas have the knowledge. As to being partly unattached, he is that. That's the end of the sutta. Here, the Brahmatisa mentioned about the six types of Arya. He left out the last one not mentioned is the Saddhanusarin, the faith follower. He did not mention. But the Dhammanusarin, the Dhamma follower, and the Saddhanusarin, the faith follower, are first path attainers, according to the Samyutta Nikaya 25.1. And then the Buddha talked in the end about the one who abides in signless mental concentration. Signless mental concentration is that concentration of mind which is not attached to any sign, which does not have any sign, any object in the mind. Now, the next sutta is 7.6.54. Once, while the Exalted One dwelt near Vesali at the Gable Hall in Mahavana, General Siha visited him, saluted and sat down at one side. So seated, he said to the Exalted One, "Is it possible, Lord, to show the visible result of giving?" "Well, Siha, just on that I will question you in return. Explain the matter as it seems good to you." "What do you think, Siha? There might be two men, one unbelieving, mean, miserly, cross-grained, the other a believer, a master giver, delighting in constant giving. What think you, Siha? On whom would compassionate arahants first have compassion? The unbelieving, mean, miserly, cross-grained man, or the believer, the master giver, who delights in constant alms giving?" And he said, "The unbeliever, Lord, why should they first have compassion on him? But the believer, on him surely they would first have compassion." "Then what do you think, Siha? Which of the two would visiting arahants first visit?" "The believer surely, Lord." "From whom would receiving arahants first receive alms?" "From the believer surely, Lord." "To whom would teaching arahants first teach Dhamma?" "To the believer surely, Lord." "Of whom would a fair report be noised abroad?" That means a good report be circulated. "Of the believer surely, Lord." "Who would approach any gathering, nobles, Brahmins, householders, recluses, with confidence, untroubled, unashamed?" And General Siha said, "The believer surely, Lord." "And what do you think, Siha? Who on the breaking up of the body after death would arise in the happy heaven world, the unbelieving, mean, miserly, cross-grained man, or the believer, the master giver, who delights in constant alms giving?" "The unbeliever, Lord, why shall he on the breaking up of the body after death arise in the happy heaven world? But the believer after death may arise in the happy heaven world." "Lord, these 6 visible results of giving declared by the Exalted One, I go not to the Exalted One by faith for that. I just know them. I, Lord, am a giver, a master giver, and on me compassionate arahants first have compassion. Me they first visit, from me they first receive, me they first teach Dhamma, of me a fair report is noised abroad. General Siha is a giver, a worker, the Sangha's servant." It is said, "Any gathering I approach, nobles, Brahmins, householders, recluses, I approach with confidence untroubled." Lord, these 6 visible results of giving declared by the Exalted One, I go not to the Exalted One by faith for that. I just know them. But when the Exalted One said, the giver Siha, the master giver, on the breaking up of the body after death arises in the happy heaven world, that I know not, and there I go to the Exalted One by faith. And the Buddha said, "Thus it is, Siha, thus it is. The giver, Siha, the master giver, on the breaking up of the body after death arises in the happy heaven world." That's the end of the sutta. So in this sutta, the Buddha has described the visible results of giving. And General Siha said that the first 6 results he can see to be true because it is applicable to him, because he is a great giver, a great a person who makes a lot of offerings to the monks. But the last one he said that he could not see, and that a giver by alms giving would take rebirth in the heaven world. So he said he just has to believe the Buddha for that. This General Siha used to be one of the followers of the external sect ascetics, but later he went to see the Buddha and was converted by the Buddha. And in one of the suttas later we'll come across, he invited the Buddha to his house for food, and he served the Buddha with meat. And the external sect ascetics were jealous that they had lost such a famous disciple, such a powerful disciple, and they spread around the word that the Buddha was eating meat that was purposely slaughtered for the Buddha. And the Buddha, when the Buddha heard that, then the Buddha informed the people that they only eat meat. The Buddha and his disciples only eat meat with 3 conditions: that they did not slaughter the animal or ask somebody to slaughter. Second, they don't see the killing. Thirdly, they don't hear the animal cry as it was being slaughtered. And this shows that the Buddha and his disciples did eat meat, only that it had these 3 conditions. Now we come to Sutta 7.6.56. Once, when the Exalted One was staying in the bamboo grove near Kimbila, the Venerable Kimbila approached him, saluted and sat down at one side. So seated, he said, "Lord, what is the cause, the reason why, when the Tathagata has become completely cool, Sat Dhamma or true Dhamma will not last?" And the Buddha said, "Suppose, Kimbila, when the Tathagata has become completely cool, the monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen live without reverence, without heed for the teacher, live without reverence, without heed for Dhamma, live without reverence, without heed for the Sangha, live without reverence, without heed for the training, without reverence, without heed for concentration, live without reverence, without heed for earnestness, live without reverence, without heed for goodwill. Verily, Kimbila, this is the cause, the reason why, when the Tathagata has become completely cool, Sat Dhamma or true Dhamma will not last." That's the end of the sutta. This is one of the suttas where the causes for the disappearance of the true Dhamma, that means the discourses of the Buddha, are given. And here we find it's because people have no respect for the Buddha. Instead of following the Buddha, they prefer to follow some other. And then they have no reverence for the Dhamma, that means the discourses of the Buddha. Because in the Anguttara Nikaya 4.180, the Buddha said that Dhamma refers to the suttas, the discourses. And then the Sangha is the Bhikkhu Sangha here. It's not referring to the Arya Sangha because you don't know who is an Arya, who is not an Arya, but you know who is a monk, who is not a monk. So here means without reverence for the Sangha of monks. And possibly because the monks do not follow the precepts. So people lose faith, lose respect for the monks, and slowly that also causes the downfall of the true Dhamma. The training means keeping the precepts generally. And then for concentration, no reverence for concentration. This we can see nowadays where people say that samadhi, which the Buddha refers to as the jhanas or one-pointedness of mind in the suttas, they say is not necessary. And then without reverence for goodwill or metta is necessary if Buddhists are to be united and in harmony. And then the next sutta is 7.6.57. Monks, holding fast to 7 things, a monk may destroy the asavas and enter and abide in the asava-free emancipation by mind. What 7? Herein monks, a monk is full of faith, virtuous, learned, lives secluded, has sustained energy, is mindful, is wise. Verily, monks, holding fast to these 7 things, a monk may destroy the asavas and enter and abide in the asava-free emancipation by mind. That's the end of the sutta. Here are mentioned certain qualities, certain states which are very important For a monk to attain destruction of the asavas, the first one is having faith, saddha, in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. The second one is virtuous. That means he has moral conduct, keeps the precepts. Third one, he's learned. That means he's knowledgeable on the suttas and the Vinaya. The fourth one, he lives secluded. Seclusion is very important for a monk who wants to strive to end suffering. And then after that, he has sustained energy or energetic effort. And then he's mindful, practices sati, and finally he is wise, he has wisdom. The next sutta is 7.6.58. Once, while the Exalted One dwelt among the Bhagis on Crocodile Hill in the deer park at Besakala Grove, the Venerable Maha Moggallana sat nodding in the village of Kalavala Mutta among the Magadhis. And the Exalted One with the Deva eye, surpassing man's in clearness, saw him seated there nodding. And as a strong man might bend his arm to and fro, the Exalted One vanished from the deer park and appeared before the Venerable Maha Moggallana. And the Exalted One sat down on the appointed seat, and when he was seated, he said to the Venerable Maha Moggallana, "You were nodding, Moggallana. You were dozing, Moggallana." "Yes, Lord," replied Venerable Maha Moggallana. "I'll just stop here for a while." This is one of very interesting and important suttas. And this is a time when Venerable Maha Moggallana had just become a disciple of the Buddha not long. And he had not yet become an Arahant. So he was practicing very hard. And according to some other later books, for 7 days after the Venerable Maha Moggallana became a disciple of the Buddha, he did not sleep. He was practicing so hard that he tried not to sleep at night. And after the 7 days, he attained Arahanthood. So this sutta doesn't mention how many days that was after Venerable Maha Moggallana had joined the Buddha. And then the Buddha said, "Accordingly, Moggallana, if while you abide thoughtful, the thought comes, drowsiness has descended, take no heed of it, make no ado of that thought, and maybe as you abide so, that drowsiness will pass. If abiding so, it pass not, then you should ponder in your heart on Dhamma, as heard, as mastered, explore it with your mind, review it, and maybe as you abide so, that drowsiness will pass. If it pass not, then you should repeat Dhamma in detail, as heard, as mastered, and maybe that drowsiness will pass. If it pass not, then you should pull both earlobes and knead the limbs with a hand, and maybe that drowsiness will pass. If it pass not, then you should arise from sitting, cleanse the eyes with water, survey the horizon, and gaze up at the starry constellations, and maybe that drowsiness will pass. If it pass not, then you should apply your mind to the thought of light, fix your mind on the thought of day. As by day, so by night, as by night, so by day. Thus with mind unhindered, unhampered, you should make your thought become radiant, and maybe that drowsiness will pass. If it pass not, then with the senses withdrawn, the mind not outward gone, you should fix your thought on the meditation walk, conscious of it to and fro, and maybe that drowsiness will pass. If abiding so, that drowsiness pass not, then you should lion-like lie down on your right side, foot covering foot, mindful, aware, with mind set on the thought of arising. And on awakening, Moggallana, get up quickly, thinking, I'll not live yoked to the pleasures of lying, reclining and drowsiness. Verily, let your training be thus, Moggallana. Moreover, Moggallana, let your training be thus. not lifted up with pride, will I visit families. Verily, Moggallana, let your training be thus. For in families, Moggallana, there are many things to be done, whereby the men may not notice the monk's coming. And if the monk visit lifted up with pride, he'll think, who now, I wonder, has embroiled me with this family? These men have now no liking for me. And so from getting nothing, he becomes troubled. Being troubled, he becomes worked up. Being worked up, he becomes uncontrolled. When uncontrolled, the mind is far from concentration. Moreover, Moggallana, let your training be thus. I'll talk no provoking talk. Verily, Moggallana, let your training be thus. When there is provoking thought, Moggallana, much talk may be expected. When there is much talk, one becomes worked up. Being worked up, one becomes uncontrolled. When uncontrolled, the mind is far from concentration. Moggallana, I praise not fellowship just with all, nor do I not praise such fellowship. Indeed, Moggallana, I praise not fellowship with house dwellers, with wanderers, with dwellings that have few sounds, little noise, are free from folk's breath, where one may live apart from man in befitting solitude. It's such that I praise. Now when he had thus spoken, the Venerable Moggallana said this to the Exalted One. Briefly, Lord, how becomes a monk freed by craving's destruction, reaching the perpetual end, the perpetual peace from effort, the perpetual holy state, the perpetual finality, and becomes foremost among devas and men? And the Buddha said, Herein, Moggallana, a monk has learned this. It befits not to be engrossed in the things of this world. If, Moggallana, a monk has learned this, it befits not to be engrossed in the things of this world. He recognizes each condition or each state, Dhamma. Recognizing each condition, he understands each condition. Understanding each condition, whatever feeling he feels, pleasant, painful, or neither, he abides seeing the impermanence of those feelings, viewing them dispassionately, looking for their end, regarding them as something to be renounced. Living in such contemplation, he cleaves not to anything in the world. Not cleaving to anything, he craves not. Not craving for anything, he becomes just completely cool in himself, and he knows birth is destroyed, lived is the holy life, done is what had to be done. There is no more of this to come. Verily, Moggallana, in this manner, briefly, a monk becomes freed by craving's destruction, reaching the perpetual end, the perpetual peace from effort, the perpetual holy state, the perpetual finality, and becomes foremost among devas and men. That's the end of the sutta. It's quite an interesting and important sutta. Here, the Buddha found the Venerable Moggallana dozing. So he gave some very practical advice. He told the Venerable Moggallana, he said, if drowsiness comes, firstly take no heed of it. Just try to ignore that drowsiness. But if you can't ignore that drowsiness, then think about Dhamma. Review Dhamma that you have heard. And maybe the drowsiness will pass. But if it doesn't, then you should repeat Dhamma in detail. You remember in the Buddha's days there were no books, so they had to repeat Dhamma after they had learned the sutta. They had to repeat it. So here the Buddha is saying the third thing to do is to repeat the Dhamma. And then if by repeating the Dhamma, the drowsiness still doesn't go away, then the Buddha said, pull both ears and rub the limbs with the hands, massage the limbs with the hands, maybe to get the blood flowing, and maybe drowsiness will go away. But if it does not, then clean the eyes with water and look up into the sky, look at the stars, etc. Maybe the drowsiness will pass. But if it does not, again, then think of light. Make the mind think of light. so that when the mind is bright, it doesn't become sleepy. But if that doesn't work, then the Buddha said, walk, take a walk, take a meditation walk. Be mindful and take a meditation walk. And if even by walking the drowsiness doesn't go away, then finally the Buddha said, lie on the right side. Take a rest, but get up quickly. As soon as one wakes up, then get up quickly. Don't lie on the bed. Most people tend to lie on the bed and enjoy the pleasure of lying down, but the Buddha said, don't enjoy it. So these are the practical steps the Buddha gave. Then after that, the Buddha gave him another 3 types of advice. The first one, not to have pride when he visits families, because the Buddha said sometimes when a monk goes to visit families on alms round, sometimes they might not notice him. And they have many things to do, they might not notice him and might not come out to bring him food. And if he waits outside the door and doesn't get any food, if he has pride, he might think these people are purposely not giving him food, and then he becomes worked up. So the Buddha said not to have any pride. The second one, the Buddha said not to talk any provoking talk. If you talk any provoking talk, then there'll be a lot of talk. And then from too much talk, one becomes unmindful and the mind doesn't become concentrated. And thirdly, the advice the Buddha gave was to live apart in seclusion. But this generally, not all monks can do that, live apart, live in seclusion, because you need a lot of discipline. If a monk doesn't have enough training and discipline, then instead of practicing more, he might tend to sleep more. Then the Venerable Mahamoggallana asked the Buddha for advice on how to attain the final goal. And the Buddha said to remember that it is that one should not be engrossed with the things of the world. And then if one is not engrossed in the things of the world, then one abides seeing the impermanence of feelings, viewing them dispassionately, and then one cleaves not to anything in the world, and from that one does not crave for anything in the world, and one lets go, renounces everything in the world, and slowly one becomes completely cool.